at the last FOMC. It's rather late this month. And then, after that comes March. So just be aware of that. We do have the Chinese cakes and PMI overnight tonight. So interesting. All right. Okay. Let's do it. All right. Spartan said he did. I probably shouldn't be doing this with the live stream. Anyways, he sent to you email address his picks, part 1 for 2022. And to be honest with you, I'm in like 90% of what he posted, just so you know. Okay, so this is what we do every day because he walks on water, Dr. Gottlieb. Sometimes he puts his foot in it, but anyways, the sky's not falling. Once again, it is not falling. And then we're going to get to an endemic, and then we go from there. So we've talked about this before, right? All or nothing. I still think that the countries that are doing total shutdowns are making a mistake because the variant, the Omicron, is really not that harsh. Like it's not like the Delta. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is, this is the only way you get to global herd immunity is everybody gets sick. 90% they're saying the epidemiologists have to have something, right? Some sort of, like I said, I don't think it's prudent to do what they're doing, but hey, that's my opinion, right? All right, good quarters tend to beget good quarters. This is the theme, and this is what the mantra is. This equals momentum. Momentum on the upside, momentum on the downside. Okay, so let's take back. And this is why it's so important to filter out a lot of the noise and there's so much fear mongering. I say this almost every single day. These businesses are there live to make you to sell, right? And what they do is it's sensationalism. And I just think it's not appropriate. That's what I'm saying. All right, so let's take a look here. The table below, when you have the last quarter, 84% of the time, the next quarter is up 16% down. Average up is 7.1%. Largest up is 14.9%. Don't forget Kramer saying the same thing. Why can't 2022 be another good year? I'm just saying. We're going to have a very interesting deep dive on interest rates. And I want to show you some stuff. I think it's rather fascinating. It's not what you think. All right. Here we have bond risk levels. And this is a divergence right here, right? You would see what's going on, and yet we didn't take this out. That's notable, right? Here's another divergence, right? Same thing. 20 years actually diverging and bouncing, right? Here's a total bond in Bntx that's bouncing. So these are all positive tailwinds on the interest rate side for it cooling off a little bit. Right? That's what I'm thinking right now. All right, so here's the rankings. Biotech, healthcare, the stuff that was fantastic, clean energy, technology, and then crude oil services. And I discussed this with you. MLP, January is an incredibly strong month. And that's why we got into AMLP. I'm probably gonna get on most of it though, and just switch over to XLE, okay? Here on the energy, tech, money flows out. Energy, money flows in. You know, with commodities, this is what I pound the table on. You want to buy when nobody wants to buy, and you want to sell when nobody wants to sell. But the problem is when you get this sort of tailwind, it's like stocks. It's almost impossible to pick a top because you don't know how far it's going to extend. And these extensions can last for weeks and months. So no heroes here. I'm not picking any tops in this. I am a little bit in SCO. On the physical, I still have my, my Schlumberger, I'm an XLE, Oxy, stuff like that. So whatever sweeps I get into. NASDAQ, when was the last time? NASDAQ was, all right, utilities top dog, consumer stays. This is reflective of the market that we see right now. The other thing that really, really piques my interest is that the Dow never leads with higher interest rates like this, okay? The Dow is going up. Now, what happens is the Dow does come down, but not to the same degree, but it never rallies with higher interest rates, what we see. Fascinating setup for us on that. And yes, I'm still in my DXD calls. Okay, actually equity. 5-year optics, you can see what's going on here coming back. Well, it's reflective of what we know. Okay, so here you have here, these are the ones that are softish. Top dog, Peru. Okay, whatever. All right, we move on. Fund flows. TLT, right? I mean, now with yesterday, this is really interesting. You would have thought, right, with the price action we saw yesterday, well, like there would have been more on the outflow side. Nope, nope. And especially with the NASDAQ doing what it was doing, it's not a good heat map. I cannot impress upon you enough. But once again, the 96, it can go, it can go to 100, but it's very unusual, okay? So here you have the bonds, you know, single digits. This can't stay extended for too long. So you're gonna see a bounce, yields going down, futures going up, probably in the 5-year, and it's probably gonna be within the next couple of days. By the end of the week, it should be. And it could be that non-farm payrolls is the catalyst, right? I don't know, I'm just saying. This is not a good heat map, breath map either. You can see all these rosy, this is energy, obviously, right? Okay, now this is a divergence, which is fascinating because the McCullough summation is not red, which you would think. And IWM, look at this, minus 263. I'm just saying. My narrative is still for IWM cues to bounce. Don't forget we had sloppy chopper to the middle of the month, then it starts to take hold again. I have not added on to my seasonality trades as a result of that. I'm waiting for the middle of the month, and then I'll start to do that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I have lots of fantastic ideas to go into. All right, come on, let's talk. This is the IWM. This is so unusual. Yesterday was very unusual, right? And the reason why it was really unusual is that going back 30 years, this is the NASDAQ's strongest month. But we'll see why I'm concerned, because of the Dow against the spreads with the other indices is flashing danger, danger. And this is something that I can't quite wrap my head around, okay? All right, so let's take a look at our peepettes that have a high success rate. Dude, UBS, Deutsche Bank, reiteration, but he's 100%. Ambarella, upgrade, 84%. Lamb Research, you know, that's Mav and I really love this stock. I'm in some stuff. It's crazy ass expensive, an initiation. Clack, this is interesting. I might do something with that. That was an initiation as well. Top dog, AMAT. Yeah, you know, I don't want to chase. You know, we'll see how that plays out though. Chesapeake, very interesting. When was the last time we saw something like that from Wells Fargo? Top dog, upgrade, downgrade. A lot of these. SGH, JVN, TSP, reiteration upgrades, a lot of reiterations, and South Beach will go into more detail. This is a shit show, excuse me, but this won't end well. We still see preponderance of call buying on Tesla, 65 million to 6 million, right? So 10 times more. That is very dangerous. Well, I shouldn't say that. That tells me that the risk is to the downside on Tesla. That's what it tells me. I shouldn't say dangerous. As a contrarian, that would say, uh-oh, Apple's not as bad. I mean, you're talking, you know, but look at this AMD as well. AMD's not as bad because it's 50-50, right? And then you look at Apple, it's not horrible, but in NVIDIA, and a lot of this is a function of CES, right? With these semis, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But this Tesla tells me we can go lower. This is the type of week, FYI, that I think the Swaggy Stocks Max Payne calculator will be very insightful. Okay, just keep an eye on that. Let's take a look at our hype equity in terms of what is being hyped forward overnight, right? AMD, AXP, BP, Cleveland Cliffs, Flex, GM, KO. I got on my KO yesterday. I may get back into it. MP, Verizon, Wells Fargo, Waste Management, and ExxonMobil. This is one of the largest, this is a divergence because normally when the market's screaming higher, we have this, not when the market's where it is right now. So this is very fascinating right now. Okay, let's take a peek. What came in? What does flow have to tell us? Yesterday, right? Apple's ranking. SPY, Rocket, SPY, KSS, right? It was interesting though, but it was 70-30. That was pretty interesting. All right, so let's take a look at inflation. Can we whip inflation now? This is a feature article from Barron's. I don't know why it's not showing. I did sign in, but who cares? All right, and basically the narrative is no. Okay, so you have to look backwards to understand the present and the future, right? Now, we have to actually, if you look at the Spanish flu, right, of the 1918, and then you look at the roaring 20s, it's not as you would think, and we'll go over this. So this is the balance.com, and I encourage you to look at inflation, GDP growth, and how the impact it had with what was a catalyst for the inflation, right? So, you know, I suspect, you can see here, this could be, you know, with 2022, right? COVID, contraction and expansion. It'll be interesting, right? All right, so let's take a look now, right, at the PCE trend. And this is all that matters right now with the Fed. We know this to be true, okay? Still sticky at this 4.23. We're actually reverting back to the mean historically, okay? So if you do trim it, I mean, obviously this is an outer, this is 8.5, 7.6. This should start to come down-ish, but because of what we're seeing in this commodity super cycle, not so much, okay? And then you can see here 3.5, 6 month, and the 12 month is 2.8, right? And this is what they care about is a 12 month. Now, granted, it's trending higher, but you know, the sky is not falling yet. Okay, so here's a graph. This goes back to the 1970s. And the reason why I want this with this is because this incorporates in some part of the 70s, right, with the inflation spike we had, right? And this tells you what the Fed funds did as a spread against the PCE trim, okay? So here was this PCE, right? You can see that was 17.5%, and we had a Fed funds right down here of 9.48 as a spread. So there's no question that rates have to go higher. The question's gonna be is, what are they gonna do? Now, if you look at this here in terms of Fed funds rate, right? I think this is where they're gonna, and you see this goes all the way back to the 1990s, right? The range is basically on this, okay? You've got on the high side, right? And the PCE is 2.18, but you see here in terms of the Fed funds, it was 5.9. So I don't think we get there. I think we get closer to 3.5, 4 over time. And you may be talking 5 to 10 years. But the market, the institutions are very efficient. They're basically going crazy right now. Okay. Here's inflation adjusted crude prices. Now, the reason why we're looking at this is because there was 2 spikes that is notable for us to look at. Not so much, it's to look at the World War II and 1970. So those are the ones that we want to look at in terms of reflection. We don't quite have it here in terms of prior, but you can see here the spread that's going on between inflation adjusted versus the actual crude prices. So this is pretty notable, but even more fascinating, right? Well, this was in 2008, right? So there's so many things going on that basically dictate that we should be aware of. All right. So we were talking about the roaring 20s, and it's interesting. And the reason why I say this is if you look at the roaring 20s, okay, this is the 1918 Spanish flu, okay? Interest rates went up to 20%, okay? They didn't go down. And in the roaring 20s, the reason why the stock market did so well was because interest rates collapsed, right? And then you had your Great Depression. Next, World War II. Next, this is 1970s. This was the oil embargo. This is what happened, okay? So now we're here. at 6.11%. And basically the question is, do we get to this level? That's the question, right? So then the next question is, well, what does this mean to stocks? Okay, so let's take a little bit of a deep dive here. So we know that in the roaring 20s, right? So here's the Spanish flu. Market went down 41%. Then it popped 85%. Then it came back down, right? 48%. And then you can see it screamed higher. So that's one section. Next section, 1940s, where inflation's spiking. Market went down 25%, and that lasted approximately, that was 4 months it took to happen. Then consolidation for multiple months, and then another retest. There's multiple years, and then it went higher. Let's take a look here. Okay, in the 1970s. Next, all right? Same narrative, okay? Oil stocks, it went from here down to here, 46% in a matter of 1, 2, well, took longer. This is like 4 or 5 months, no more than that, almost a year. And then that was it, then it spiked. And then you had a retest, but it still went higher, okay? So yes, if this continues, there's no question that the market can go down. The dilemma that I have right now, and obviously everybody's focused on the Qs, the dilemma I have is the Dow should be a lot lower than it is right now. Okay, just notable. All right, interest rates. Another interesting read. This is out of the Fed, St. Louis Fed. You know, this is where these ideas and this is muscle memory by reintroducing these sorts of papers that the Fed has available. Now, what you probably don't know is that the Fed funds didn't come into existence until the 1950s. So what was used prior to that? Railroad bonds, commercial paper, treasury bills. Okay, pretty interesting. Interesting. All right, so let's take a peek here. Let's take a look at the bonds. Yield curve is obviously steepening dramatically. Oh, I shouldn't say dramatically. I still maintain and state that we're reverting back to the mean. Okay. This is the, if you want to look at, this is the break-even, 5-year break-even inflation rate off of Fred. They have this, so you can see right here what it would be, right? That would be 2.9 off the 5-year. Okay, so that's notable. All right, let's take a look here. We are sitting in this new quadrant. Once again, I believe we're reverting back to where we were prior to COVID. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think this is a healthy thing. The market has to get used to it. Okay, but don't forget, the 5-year has not taken out the previous high, right? Which happened in November. It was a monthly, okay? FYI. So basically we're in the upper quadrant right now. The question is, do we break? No idea. XLF, this is what I'm talking to you about. I'm waiting for this to break, pop, and go higher. The pivot point on this is 40.86. So this is going to be a theme for me for 2022. I'm building already, and I'll continue to post delta trades on the XL. For me, it's easier to do that instead of individual tickers. Okay, here is the 2 5s. You can see it continues to widen, notable, right? Here's the 510. It actually is fascinating. It had topped, now it's coming back down, and now it's basically going back up. So this is fascinating to see what's over. So the 10-year is starting to gain a little bit on the 5-year. Here's the 530, once again, fascinating. Okay, it did not take out last month's pivot high, notable, right? That's a divergence. So here we are, this is the 10-year. It has not taken out this double top that happened in March of last year, notable. This is why the 5 is the taper when you have to focus in on. Chinese, they're trying to lower their interest rates, but by doing nothing is actually lowering it because of global interest rates going up. German trying to pop out. I don't know if it can do that. Okay, it's reverted back to this mean. This is the 50 EMA on the monthly, no idea. Okay, let's take a look at the dollar because it is notable. Another divergence with interest rates going up the way they were going. The dollar should have broken this Dow trend line. It did not, notable. Okay, here's a Chinese yuan. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of divergences going on that does not equal some of the stuff that we're seeing in terms of the market fear with the interest rates. Okay, to me, they're just rallying to the top end of the range, but and everybody says, oh my God, oh my God. So they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, my time is up. I hope you enjoyed. Time for me to pass on to Spartan. Are you ready, sir? I shall carry on and wait for him to pop in. Okay. All right. I want to go over something really important that is notable, and we started to look at it yesterday. Okay, and that's the Dow. All right. So this is the Dow, okay, against the NASDAQ on the future side. When this happens, well, it's pretty obvious what happens. The only time this happens is when you see a dramatic, I don't want to use dramatic, but you see a notable decline in the Qs. Okay, we're starting to see this potentially, right? Off of this, if we break this pivot and we start to go back up, that means that we're going to get a 16% spread increase between the Dow and the NASDAQ. The only way this happens, my friends, is if the Dow stays still and the NASDAQ goes down 16%, or the Dow goes up 5% and the NASDAQ goes down to 10%, 11%. This is something we have to watch. The question is going to be if this continues. Okay, let's take a look now at the Dow against the Russell. It has been gaining. This is so, I cannot impress upon you how really out of sync this is right now, that the Dow, and a lot of this has to do with the transports, right? And we're also talking about some of the oil names, yada, yada, yada. Some of the, obviously the cyclicals with the consumer staples, et cetera. Anyways, this is really unusual, right? It has my attention, and I'm showing you that it has my attention right now, okay? So here's the Dow against the, where's the SPY? There it is, right? This is the Dow against the SPY. Same thing happening as we saw with the Qs, okay? We've got a bottoming formation here on the monthly. We also see that this is the downtrend line, okay, on the monthly, all right? We have this pivot right here, you can see. It's pretty obvious right there. All right. Once again, the only way this happens, okay, is if the SPY rolls over and the Dow does not roll over as much. Now, granted, it's not as dramatic as it is with the Qs, okay? So you're talking in that regard of much smaller price action, okay? But if it starts to go higher, on the extreme, it would be 11%, but more than likely, it would be 4.5%. So of the two, obviously, the Dow and the SPY, which is what we have been seeing, right, is stronger against the Qs and the IWM. All right. I don't know. We have to keep looking at this, though. Let's take a look at the DAX quickly. Breaking out, let's see, this is the pivot point right here. If not, we got a double top, obviously. I mean, that's, you know, the story of my walls. No, what's really interesting right now is that the EFA is actually up, right? So this is fascinating. So we are seeing that small cap type of rotation globally, right? We're seeing some money rolling over, going out overseas. I don't still like to go into China. I have my positions on, but it's going to take a hell of a lot to get me going with that. The IWM is hanging in there against the EFA. Okay, so this is domestic and this is overseas small caps, global. Okay, I do like it. I am an EFA, and I think they both can coexist. So what does that mean to me? That basically it stays within, you know, this quadrant. You know, ideally, I don't want to see this start breaking down again because that, you know, what that means. It's not a good look, right? Okay, so here we are. This is the this is emerging market. You can see there's a lot of similarities here, right? This looks exactly like the EFA, right? That spread. This actually is heavily weighted in China. So this is a cautionary tale. I don't think people understand that when you're buying emerging markets, believe it or not, China is considered an emerging market. Okay. Here's the VXN. Again, this is the NASDAQ volatility. once again, it just can't break this pivot. So that continues to tell me that people have hedges on in the NASDAQ. I mean, that's what it continues to tell me. Right? Here's the spread. This is the VIX is weakening against the VXN, and that obviously is notable because that means that the VXN is staying. The VIX is coming in, right, and the VXN is not. Right? So notable. Right? Let's take a look at FANG once again. FANG
All right, Beth, I'm ready to come on.
All right, my friend. Good job. All right, let's do it.
All right, guys, morning. What's going on? Let me just pop up the screen share here. All righty, so let's pop this up. There we go. So, guys, what's going on this morning? If you guys are new to chat, make sure to click that Discord link that's emailed to you. Once you do click that Discord link, when you do come into chat, it's going to look like this. First area to go to disclaimer section, then go to the new to chat information section, read from the top down, okay? I'll go through the new to chat information, guys, when we close down the YouTube stream at the end. Anyways, pre-market tickers on watch. What do we got going on today, guys? Couple different things. Tesla, Bntx, Roku, WBYND, and LGVN. So Tesla gapping down in sympathy with the market. Cathie Wood sells 50 million shares as well. Not that we really care. Bntx positive up, or sorry, Bntx to receive 225 million upfront, including an upfront cash payment of 75 million in equity investment of 150 million from PFE. So they signed a new agreement with them. Roku, Atlantic Equities analyst Hamilton Faber initiated coverage of Roku Inc. With an underweight rating of $136 price target. The price target implies a 39% move to the downside. Stock's gapping down a bit. Wedbush on Wayfair basically downgrades them to neutral, lowers price target to 160 from 290. Stock's gapping down on that. Beyond, KFC to launch meatless fried chicken made with Beyond Meat nationwide, gapping up yesterday on that news and continuation today. And then LGVN initiated a phase 2B trial, and it's gapping up on that. Let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint intraday. And LGVN is a former runner, FYI, guys, on the biotech side, which is why we got that move. All right, let's take a look at these names. First two we're going to be looking at today, guys, Tesla and Bntx. I'm just going to pop up the intraday chart here. There we go. So Tesla, Bntx, let's have a look. All right, Tesla. A little bit of a gap down from last day's move, but nothing major there. All right, let's do this. Let's get rid of that. Make that color. There we go. All right, 11:55:42 pivot. The level was able to be reclaimed. We got room towards 11:88 to 12:06 on the upside on Tesla. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards 11:19 to 10:96 on the downside there. Overall on Tesla, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today. If we can get back above that pivot, I think we can get a nice little push. I think it held the range nicely. It's just a matter of holding last day's low again, so that we can get that continuation to the upside. So we'll see if that happens there, but I do like the daily chart. The fact that it did fill the gap on the daily yesterday. So I'm thinking that we can get some continuation back to the upside. But again, pivot needs to be reclaimed. So I'll watch the pivot. That's going to give you the direction we need to see today. All right, Bntx, a little bit of a bounce on this news. And it does look pretty decent. Pivot to the upside today is around 226. Let's see where we got room to today. That level there. More like 227, I guess. Let's have a look at this thing intraday. All right, pivot to the upside today, 227.34 levels able to hold. You got room towards 232.70, the 239.86. Unable to hold, we look for a continuation move to the downside into the 212.44 level. Overall on this Bntx, we'll be leaning on the bearish neutral side today. I think it's going to sell off. I don't think these vaccine names are going to get that much of a bounce on any news. We've seen them kind of be weak, especially this Bntx. A lot of EMA resistance to the upside. Downtrend on the daily, I think, should be broken in the short term. Yep. But the longer term downtrend certainly is intact. So that's worth noting as well. But all leaning bearish neutral. As that pivot point fails to hold, I would expect it to come back in. If it does hold, of course, we get more of a bounce. So again, something I'll be looking mainly to play the pivot point. So that's Tesla. That is Bntx. Let's take a screenshot of these and let's move on to the next. All right, next two, Roku and W. Which Roku had some pretty good weakness yesterday. Let me see some more. There we go. Here. All right, let's take a look at this thing intraday. Get that level up to 220s. It's a little bit off. There we go, 221. Okay. So basically, breaking a inverted head and shoulders to the downside. The pivot to the downside is going to be the 215.74 level. That level is unable to hold. We do have room towards 207. Sorry, 206.66. That level breaks. 196.81 will be tested on the downside. So quite a bit of room lower. Able to hold, we look for a pushback on Roku into that 221. I believe 19 level, or sorry, 221.96. Called 221.94. That level breaks. 225.25 to 228.53 will be tested on the upside. Overall on Roku, going to be leaning on the bearish neutral side today, looking for continuation lower. If that pivot point can't be reclaimed, I think we can get some continuation there. Roku certainly does look quite ugly on the daily for a continued move lower. Let's take a look at Wayfair. Another ugly looking chart for continuation. Holy smokes, look at that room, guys. Wow, wow. It's a lot of room. Okay, let's take a look at where we got room to today, though. Let's mark that last day low. All right. 179.28 pivot to the downside today. This level is able to be reclaimed. We got room towards 190.20 to 196.86. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards the 166.61 to the 159.73 level on the downside if that level breaks. Overall on Wayfair, another name I'll be leaning on the bearish side if the pivot's unable to be reclaimed this morning. Looking for continuation lower. Do have an H pattern on the daily, which is primarily a bearish pattern for continuation. So I think if that's unable to hold, we should see that continued pull lower. So that is Roku, that is Wayfair. Let's take a look at the next two names. Beyond and LGVN. that. Move down a little bit. All right, let's take a look at this thing intraday here. All right, 66.20, pivot to the upside today on beyond. This level is able to hold. We got room towards 66.38. That level breaks. We can see further continuation towards 70.69. Unable to hold. Look for a pullback towards 63.74 to 60.37 on the downside. Overall on beyond, we'll be leaning on the bullish neutral side today if that pivot point can hold. It is curling off the lows. Needs to basically hold that pivot to get back above some EMA support, 13 EMA to be exact. And if it can, then we can see a continuation push to the upside, in my opinion. So that will be a key level to keep an eye on beyond. All right, let's take a look at LGVN, guys. So former runner biotech, as we know, talked about that a little bit. Hasn't really made too much of a move lately. And the range isn't huge. Actually, it's pretty decent today. Okay, that's not bad. Let's take a look at this thing intraday here. All right, pivot upside 1397, levels able to hold 1516. That level breaks. We got room for continuation into the 1659. Unable to hold. We look for a pullback towards the 1397 to, unable to hold. We look for a pullback towards 1249 to the 1119 level on the downside. Overall on LGVN, I'm actually leaning on the bullish neutral side as well this today. Looking for a continuation push to the upside, grind higher if that pivot point can hold. I think it's got some nice room off the lows. Back above 50 EMA support and EMA support in the short term with some range higher. So I think that looks pretty decent. So that's beyond, that is LGVN. All right, let's take a look at the SPY and the FANG. All right, guys, market, what's going on today? So we did get rejected at the all-time high range yesterday. Not a huge rejection, but it's still within that range. Uptrend actually is intact on the short-term hourly chart, which is good. Let me show you that. Just gonna draw it out. There you go. So there's your uptrend intact on the hourly, which we actually should definitely be aware of where that level is. Do we want to put any more levels? Nope. That should be good. Okay. All right, pivot on the upside today, guys, 477.88. This level is able to hold to get room towards 479.11 to the 479.92. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback on LGVN towards 476.10 to 473.86 on the downside. Overall on this name, sorry, on LGVN, on SPY, going to be looking for a actual continuation push higher. Kind of like these gap down days. Typically, they're a little bit more bullish or easy to play on the long side. So I'll be looking for a continuation push higher. If we can get back above that pivot, I would expect, in my opinion, the uptrend to hold. So I am leaning on the bullish side today. Let's take a look at the FANG here. All right, 175 or 170, sorry, 179.69 on Apple is going to be the pivot to the upside today. If this level is able to hold, we got room for continuation on Apple towards the 182.10 area. That level breaks, 183.36 will be tested. Unable to hold, we look for pullback towards 176.89. That level breaks, 173, whoops, 173.94 will be tested on the downside. And overall on Apple, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today. We did pull back yesterday into EMA support. That all held up, uptrends intact from the daily. I still think it looks fine for continuation. So I like that on the bigger picture point of view. Intraday just needs to reclaim that pivot for a continuation push. Let's take a look at Amazon here. So Amazon rejected at the 50 MA yesterday, as we can see on the daily chart. A little bit of a pullback there. Those levels. So I can do this in the short term. These are really tight. Okay, so pivot to the upside today on Amazon, or downside, I should say, is the 33.42.62 level. This level is able to hold room towards 337. Sorry, 33.71 looks like 33.72.31 on the upside. That level breaks, 33.96 will be tested. Unable to hold, look for pullback towards 33.26.44 to 33.02.28 on the downside. Overall on Amazon, going to be leaning on the bearish side today. Bearish neutral, looking for a continuation lower if the pivot's unable to hold. Big rejection at the 50 MA. I think it wants to retest the bottom end range here. That will probably hold it when it does test it. Seems like a very strong support because it is. And then we can see what's what. Screenshot that. Let's move on to Netflix. All right, guys, Netflix 590.22 pivot. Lowest level is able to hold. You got room towards 594.16 to 675. Unable to hold. We look for a pullback on Netflix into the 581.90 level. Overall, going to be leaning on the, I think, bullish neutral side today. Did get a double bottom yesterday, bounced off of it. Now we got to see if that's pivot can hold so it can reclaim that head and shoulders, which is that 594.16 level. On the upside, if it does, then we should see more of a bounce. But strong support so far is holding up on the daily, and that's a positive. Can expect a little bit more of a bounce, in my opinion. I think 598s, and then we'll see what happens there. Whether it reclaims short-term EMA support or not. But short-term bounce, I think, is still lined up. Doesn't have a ton of room in it, but it does have some. All right, Facebook. 50 MA held yesterday, which was obviously a key support. Let's see, 335, yeah. All right, 335. Ooh, let me just click on this, guys. 335, pivot to the upside today. This level is able to hold. We got room for continuation into the 337.32 to 340.02 on the upside. Unable to hold, 331.95 will be tested on the downside. Overall on Facebook, going to be leaning bullish. Neutral, looking for a continuation push to the upside today, if that pivot point can hold. So we'll see what happens there. That is Facebook. All right, let's take a look at Google here. Google 50 MA pivot, 2894. This level is able to hold. We got room for continuation into the 29, 24, 58 spot. That level breaks. We can see 29.52 will be tested. Unable to hold. We look for a pullback towards the 28.64 on the downside. Overall on Google, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today, looking for a continuation push higher. If that pivot point can be reclaimed, I think we can get a bounce off that 50 MA. So that's what I'll be looking for there. All right, let's take a look at the VIX, Qs, and IWM. All right, VIX guys, what do we got? So kind of slow down on the downside on the daily, as we can see. Pivot's going to be 17 bucks. This level is able to hold 1774, unable to hold 1634. I still do think in the short term, the magnet on the VIX is down here, obviously 1473s. But again, we'll have to see what happens. It is kind of slowing down. If you get that EMA support reclaim, then we typically do get a little bit of a bounce on it. So that is notable. Keep an eye on that in the short term for now. So far, not reclaimed. Just an FYI. All right, 395, 12 guys pivot to the downside today on the Qs. Levels able to be reclaimed. We got room towards 397. $397.02 to 399. Unable to hold, we look for pullback towards 399. Sorry, 393.51 to 391.42 on the downside, and that 50 MA would be tested. Going to be leaning on the bullish side of the Qs today, or bullish neutral, I should say. Looking for a reclaim of the pivot, hold of it this morning, and a bounce to the upside. We'll see what happens, obviously, with tech, though. Big cap tech needs to bounce for a Qs to actually work. And last but not least, guys, let's take a look at the IWM here. So Q's a little bit of a pop yesterday in the morning, obviously, and then we had a pullback to the 50 MA, which did end up holding. So it's stuck within a range, and it's a fairly tight range at that. Okay, so pivot to the upside today, guys, will be around the 223.65 area, aka the 50 MA. That level holds, room towards 225.90, the 227.18. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards 223.65 to the 221.26 level on the downside. Overall on IWM, whoops, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today if pivot point can hold, which I do think it will. We got a ton of EMA support there, 50 MA for you name it, it's in that area. So we'll see what happens. Anywho, that's the SPY, that's the FANG. Those are the individual names that we're looking at today, guys. I'm going to go ahead, pass over to Selpeach while I type up that pre-market action plan. Then we'll come back after he's done, do a quick little recap and be ready for the open. Selpeach, if you're ready, it's all yours.
Okay, guys and girls, let's see what we got today. All right. Okay, so this market is being controlled by the bond market. I don't think anybody can argue about that, right? So the 10 years at 165, down a tinge today, 0.015. The curve is 0.28, so expanding a little, but really not that much. Okay. So there's a story out there basically saying that corporate bond issuance is up a lot. Okay, I think it was in 2 weeks, it's something like 20-something billion. And the market is repricing for that. Maybe there's some credence to that, not quite sure. Maybe that's the reason for the spike that we're seeing. Really not quite sure about that, but it doesn't matter, okay? Rates moved up pretty definitively, and we saw how stocks reacted accordingly, right? But at the end of the day, you have to weigh all investment alternatives and see which one's the best, okay? And make no mistake about it, with rates at 165, okay, and inflation running well north of 2%, you can invest in bonds and lock in losses if you choose, or you can take a shot in something else, okay? Equities. So the question becomes group rotation, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't think the question is, are equities the best house in the neighborhood? They clearly are, okay? So let's look overseas, and we'll circle back to that conversation in a minute. The 10-year in London's flat, 1.08. Pretty much bond market's pretty flat across the board, okay? Let's just leave it at that. All right. Let's just look at the setup for these indexes. I look at them a little differently than other mods, so I like to put my spin on it. I look at the S&Ps, it looks great. The Qs, with all the nonsense going on in these tech names, it still looks fine. The Russell looks fine. Okay, let's look at the Dow transports, which is a good leading indicator. That still is in bullish mode. All right. You look at the Dow Industrials, bullish mode. Okay, so we're getting a correction in a certain part of the market, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what our other indicators are saying. Okay, let's look at commodities. Oil's up 1%. Trading in a pretty good range. These stocks have been pretty strong the last few days. I think they continue to stay strong. Okay. Natural gas is up a little, 380, up 8 cents. Nothing to get alarmed about there, unless you're trying to heat your home and you're out of money, and then it's a problem. Copper, tight trading range, and the agricultural commodities a little lower this morning, but not enough to matter. Okay, it's not going to really affect anything. Currency market has been super flat. Mixed against North America, the dollar is down against the yen, down a little bit against the Chinese currency. You know, with our rates moving up the way it is, I would have thought the dollar would be stronger than it is, quite frankly, and I'm a little surprised it's not. Maybe our deficit is having some effect on the strength of the dollar. It's probably that. And we're flat against the euro, 113 over there, okay? Crypto world, this thing's hit a headwind, okay? And 46,000 on Bitcoin. I don't look at Bitcoin as that different than these high PE techs, to be honest with you guys. I think it's cut from the same cloth. Ethereum, flat. Solana, flat. Okay, so crypto's pretty flat. And let's look at the foreign markets. Okay, the FTSE's up 16, the DAX is up 114, the CAC is up 54. That's about anywhere from 1/4 to 3/4%. Europe should outperform the US in this kind of tape, okay, because they don't have a lot of high PE names and they don't have a lot of tech. So I guess those things coincide, but you know, in the kind of stocks that you're seeing moving, you know, they're loaded with those kind of names. All right. They're moving to the upside, I should say. They don't have a lot of these ridiculous high-tech names, which, you know, let's face it, the last 2 years, they've been fantastic. So I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying they don't have them. Okay. And let's look over in Asia. You have the Nikkei flat. You have Hong Kong down 1.5%, and you've got China down a little over 1% there. Okay, and that's really it. Okay, so so group rotation. We'll go to group rotation in a minute. China. Well, what happened? Banks Fed. You're going to have. I think what's his name? Powell gets. Sworn in next week or something like that. I don't think that's significant. China. So you had Jeff Gundlach today saying China is uninvestable. You had Charlie Munger, who turned 98 on Sunday, buying a little Baba. And now you have Jim Cramer saying it's impossible to invest in the Chinese market because she's very communist. Okay, duh. We've been saying this here for a very long time. I don't touch these stocks at any price. Okay, until that she gets that nomination, they have that thing in October. I think it's going to, the rhetoric and what's going on there is going to stay the same, and you're going to get bounces along the way in these stocks. But this is not about stocks. This is the companies. Okay, some of these companies are fantastic. No argument from me. It's about the stocks, and the stocks stink. And why do the stocks stink? Because the government doesn't want them to make money. All right, so unless that changes, these stocks are, going to stay in the crapper, and and in my opinion, they're uninvestable for that reason. They're tradable. They're uninvestable. Okay, I agree with Gundlach. I usually agree with Gundlach. Some of you guys don't like him. I think he's a pretty smart guy. So that's China, that's crypto, that's oil, the virus. The score here, guys. It's running out of control. What did China say this morning? Supersonic rise in COVID cases. Okay, when this is what we knew was going to happen. I know some of the members in the room have gotten COVID recently. I think that compared to the other variants, the outcome is kind of sort of mild, and hospitalizations are low. And I think when this passes, we're going to be in a different environment. Hopefully there won't be another strain that we're seeing, and I kind of think that's the way it's going to play out. And that's what the stocks are saying. Okay, so things will get back to normal. The Fed will raise between 2 and 4 times starting in what do they think, May? And I think 2 times or 3 times is probably in the market. And at the end of the day, even if they raise to 2% or whatever it's going to be, I don't think that's a whole going to provide much competition for equities, quite frankly. Okay, and I don't think they have the wherewithal to raise rates a lot, because the U.S. balance sheet is such a garbage-looking balance sheet. We have so much debt that they could, basically take such a large percentage of government spending to satisfy the debt obligations. So I think that's a path they really want to stay away from if they can. Okay, and they're going to do their damnedest to do that. All right, so that's that. What else do we have today? ADP employment numbers just echo what I'm saying. Things will get back to normal sooner than later, and that's that. But the group rotation is going to turn. Okay, that's for sure. All right. So what we're seeing is, basically, these names that are trading at extraordinary valuations in a rising rate environment, all right, are just not desirable. And I was looking at, like, for arguments, Square today, so thinking, okay, this is a pretty good company. It's a lot better than some of these others. And they've been around for a while. They must be making money. How bad can their PE be? And I look over at Square and I see 85. I mean, come on. I don't want to buy a stock with an 85 PE in this environment, in a rising rate environment. And, so bottom fishing in this group is going to be dangerous, is what I'm saying. And that's one of the better ones. I mean, I could hit any of these up, and most of them don't have any, like Okta, for argument's sake. All right. or Snow or any one of these names, okay? And God knows when they're going to have earnings, and who knows when their PE is going to be like at a level where the growth rate is really, you know, you can accept the lower PE because the high PE because the growth rate is so good. So, you know, I think these stocks will continue to be a source of funds. That does not include the FANG stocks. I see they're down this morning, but that's a different animal altogether. So don't lump them all in the same boat. Okay, look at the PE. Go to Yahoo Finance. Go to anything where they have, you know, basically, you know, the valuations and tell you what's what. All right. In this environment, don't stretch for high valuations. In this environment, you want lower valuations. That's what's working. That's what will continue to work. And it'll probably work all year, or until they realize that rates can't go higher and then maybe go down because of what the economy stalls or some crap like that. Okay, but until we see that, you know, the stocks that have led us in the last couple of years are not going to be the leaders anymore. Okay, and if you hang on to that old you know, style, or what was working before, you're going to be hurt. So try to move away from that and look at what's working now, not what was working yesterday, not what was working last year, not what was working 2 years ago. What's working now? Okay, and look at the charts and move forward. So that being said, I like the oil and gas names still. I like the bank stocks. I like materials. I like machinery names. I don't like high PE tech. I don't like solar. I don't like EV. I don't like Chinese stocks like that. Okay, that's the story. And FANG is somewhere in between, and semis are somewhere in between. You know, gun to my head, probably I'm more bullish on semis than bearish, only because you can't avoid them, and they have pricing power and all this other stuff. Okay. So that's the story on that. In the news today, let's see if we have anything interesting. Okay. MYNZ got exclusive right to an mRNA biomarker, stocks lit up. Beyond got some deal with Kentucky Fried Chicken. There was a piece out today that I read that Peter Thiel and Safran, who's one of the co-founders of Facebook, and some other big wig out west, invested in a company that makes meat biologically, which is they grow it, which is really something interesting. And I never heard of it before. And you know, Peter Thiel, he always invests in the outlier, you know, crazy stuff. And if it works, he makes $1 gazillion. And I never heard of this, and I think it's interesting, and I think you're going to hear more of it. So that was one thing that I read, just for the record. What else? SCNS reaffirmed guidance. Wejo, some partnership with Microsoft. Watt did a collaboration with somebody. Sony wants to get into the EV business. What else? Nikola, some positive stuff there. You know, these EV names, this is going to be like every other time we see a new industry come. They, you know, a couple of names come out, the stocks rock like crazy, right? And then more and more come public, and then they go into the tank, and then they merge. I mean, at the end of the day, how many automobile companies did we have prior to this EV craze? We had about, what, 10 of them? All right. Same thing's probably going to happen in the EV business. And you could rest assured that the 10 that are currently making cars, probably 8 of them, you know, will be in the EV business in a big way. And, you know, I think part of the bull thing was, you know, these European auto companies weren't going to be able to compete with the Teslas of the world. I think what Mercedes said earlier this week changes that narrative big time. And I think it's a real negative for, you know, the startups. Let's put it that way. Is Tesla a startup? I'm not really quite sure, but Lucid is, Rivian is, Fisker is, Nikola is, those guys are going to have their work cut out for them if they're going to compete against not only Tesla, but Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Ford, General Motors, all these other companies that have deep pockets. I think they have their work cut out for them. I really do. And if you can buy a battery from a third party, then it makes it even easier. So we'll see what happens. Okay. But I think the point of least resistance for this group is lower. All right. Let's see anything else that came out on the long side that's interesting. Pfizer's up, new global agreement with Bntx. On the downside, what do we have? I don't see anything that's really significant on the downside in the earnings news or something. A couple of stock offerings, SWIM, ARE, like that. But that's not it. OTCBO is another one. What about players like CHPT and Blink? I think those guys have a shot, RJ, because you're going to have to get your car charged somewhere, right? Now, the question is, does the Exxons of the world start putting charging stations on their property, which would provide a lot of competition? Or does Checkpoint sign a deal with an Exxon, in which case that stock would go nuts on the upside? So we'll see how it plays out, but it's a little different. It's a much more fragmented market, I think, than the production market. That's how I see it. Okay, so that's that. So that's, let's see. Okay, let's move on to, I guess we can move on to research. A couple of guys said a couple of interesting things that I thought. UBS, which rarely says anything interesting, downgraded Adobe and they downgraded Salesforce. Both buys to neutral. The Salesforce target is 265 from 315. Adobe was downgraded too, but basically they're saying, what they're saying, the downgrade doesn't interest me, it's what they're saying that interests me, which is basically for the last 2 years, these tech stocks pulled demand forward, which makes a lot of sense, right? And going forward, their growth is going to mitigate, is going to just be a little less than people thought. Okay, so I think that's a really fair point, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think that's a really fair point, and I think with that being said, and with the PEs the way they are, it just enhances what I've been thinking. Okay, initiate Roku with a sell. Basically, Atlantic is saying that some of these big TV guys are not going to want to incorporate Roku into their model, or they don't want to sell Roku TVs or whatever, something along those lines. I mean, Atlantic, I don't know from, they have a 136 target, stock's 222. No opinion on their research, but just reading it. Letter W was downgraded to neutral by Wedbush. Bunch of downgrades out of Bank America, okay. GOCO to buy to a sell. Estee Lauder, they downgraded. MO, Amgen, they downgraded. Regeneron goes to a sell. The COVID benefits will wane in 22. They don't like that one. Raymond James downgraded ALGT to equal weight from strong buy. Tesla, Lehman Brothers Barclays has a sell on it. Then you got guys like Mizuho that's got a buy on it with 1300. I mean, I think Tesla's different than these other companies, okay, because they're a proven commodity versus a Rivian or a Lucid, okay? I think it's a completely different animal. Let's see what else. Nelson, NLSN, I think this one's a good call. Competition gaining traction. Morgan Stanley goes from equal weight to a sell, target 21. I would say that's an actionable call. Okay, that's NLSN. All right. Now, on the long side, let's see if there's anything that really turned me on. I don't think there was. Citibank likes ADT. Stock's really cheap. You're going to make money in this, guys, if you buy it, but it's going to take some time. JP Morgan likes Peloton still. They take the target from 70 to 50. Stocks look like complete crap until it has EMA support. I'd say avoid it. And so I'm out of time, so I'm just going to stop abruptly and give it back to Spartan. So that's it for me, guys. It's all yours, bud.
All righty, thank you, South Beach guys. Morning, what's going on? Let's take a look at what we got going on today. Do a quick little recap. If you guys are new to chat, click the Discord link that's emailed to you. When you do come in, go to the disclaimer section, the new to chat information, and we'll talk about that stuff in a little bit. All right, so what do we got going on today? Pre-market tickers on watch. Everything's posted, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, all the charts as always. All right, Tesla, Bntx, Roku, WB, Beyond, and LGVN. So Tesla gapping down in sympathy with the market. Kathy would sell 50 million worth. Share stocks gapping down. Bntx gapping up to receive a $225 million upfront payment, including an upfront cash payment. Sorry, $225 million in total, including upfront cash payment of $75 million and an equity investment of $150 million from Pfizer. Roku, Atlantic Equities analyst Hamilton Faber initiated coverage of Roku with an underweight rating of $136 price target. Stocks gapping down on that. Bush downgrades Wayfair to neutral, lowers price target to 160 from 290. Beyond KFC to launch meatless fried chicken made from Beyond Meat nationwide out yesterday, gapping up on continuation. Then LGVN basically initiated a phase 2B study and gapping up on that. Let's take a look at these names from a technical standpoint. Intraday, first two that we're looking at, guys, are Tesla and Bntx. All right, Tesla, Bntx, Tesla. What do we got going on today, guys? 1155.42 pivot levels able to hold. We got room towards 1188.37 to 1206.60. Unable to hold 1119.05 to 1096.22 on the downside will be tested. Overall on Tesla, going to be leaning bullish neutral today, looking for a reclaim of that pivot, continuation push higher. Bntx 227.34 pivot level holds, 232.70 will be tested. That level breaks. We can see further continuation of 239.86. Unable to hold 220.06 on the downside. That level breaks. We can see further continuation lower into that 212 area. Overall on Bntx, going to be leaning bearish if that pivot point's unable to hold this morning. So we'll see what happens there. Let's take a look at Roku. Let's take a look at Wayfair. So Roku basically breaking below the 215.74 pivot area on the daily so far. Room towards 206.66 and 198 area. Able to be reclaimed, room towards 221.94 to 225.25 on the upside. Overall on the Roku, going to be leaning bearish, looking for a continuation lower. Let's take a look at W, 179.28. Pivot's able to hold. We got room towards the 190.20 to 196.86. Unable to hold, we look for a pullback towards the, let's take a look at that daily, guys. 166.61 to the 159.73 level on the downside. Overall on Wayfair, going to be leaning on the bearish side today, looking for continuation lower. All right, let's take a look at the last two, Beyond and LGVN. Beyond 66.20, pivot's able to hold 68.38. That level breaks. We can see further continuation into the 70.67 area. Unable to hold, look for a pullback to 63.74 to 60.37 on the downside. Overall and Beyond, going to be leaning on the bullish neutral side today if that pivot point can be reclaimed. LGVN pivot 13.97, level holds 15.16. That level breaks. We got room for continuation towards 16.59. Unable to hold 12.49 to the 11.19 level will be tested on the downside. Overall on LGVN, going to be leaning bullish neutral if that pivot point can hold. Let's take a look at the SPY and the FANG. SPY pivot upside today is going to be the 477.88 spot level is able to hold 479.11 to 479.92. Unable to hold 476.10 to the 473.87 level on the downside will be tested. Overall in the market, going to be leaning bullish neutral. And I'm going to take this up as I always do. All right. So 477.88 pivot to the upside today. Double holds. Room higher into the 479.11 resistance. Breaks, we see the 479.92 level tested. Pivot unable to hold. Room lower into the 476.10 support. Breaks. You see the Let me just zoom this out a little bit. We'll go 473.85 tested. Leaning bullish neutral. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the FANG, or the FANG in general, I should say. So that's the SPY. Let's take a look at the FANG Apple here. So Apple, 179.69 pivot level was able to hold. They got rid towards 182.10 to 183.36. Unable to hold 176.89 to 173.94 will be tested on the downside. Overall on Apple, leaning bullish neutral, looking for a continuation push higher today. Amazon pivot upside is going to be the 33.42.62 level. Unable to hold, moving towards 33.26. That level breaks. We can see further continuation to 33.02. Able to hold, we look for a push towards 33.73 to 33.96 on the upside. Overall on Amazon, going to be leaning on the bearish neutral side today, looking for continuation lower. Let's take a look at Netflix. Netflix pivot upside today is going to be 590.22. Levels able to hold 594.16 to 675 will be tested. Unable to hold 581.90 to the, actually lower towards 581.90. Overall on Netflix, leaning bullish neutral, looking for a continuation bounce on the upside today. Let's take a look at Facebook. Pivot to the upside today, 225 on, sorry, 225, 325, 335 on Facebook. Levels able to hold 337.32 to 340.02 will be tested. Unable to hold 331.95 on the downside. Overall on Facebook, leaning bullish neutral if that pivot point can be reclaimed. I do like the daily chart, but needs to get back above that 50 MA. And I should call it Meta, I guess. Google, pivot to the upside today. 28.94 levels able to hold. 29.24 will be tested. Unable to hold 28.64 on the downside. And overall on Google, looking for a reclaim of the pivot. Sorry, guys, a reclaim of the pivot and a continuation push higher today. Let's take a look at the VIX. $17 on VIX pivot levels able to hold 17.74 will be tested. Unable to hold 16.34 on the downside. Not leaning any particular direction, but watching it for direction on the market. Important to pay attention to the VIX. QQQs pivot to the downside today is going to be the 395.12 area. Levels unable to hold 393.51 to the 391.42 is where we got room to. Able to hold 397.02 to 399 will be tested on the upside. And then last but not least, guys, IWM pivot to the upside today, 223.65 levels able to hold 225.90 to 227.18, unable to hold 221.20 on the downside will be tested. Overall leaning bullish neutral on that name as well. All right, let's take a look. Actually, that's it. That's the SPY, that's the FANG. Those are the individual names that we're looking at today, guys. If you joined us on this YouTube stream, the pre-market, we do this every single Wednesday. So thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, you can go to spartantrading.com. There's a whole bunch of New Year's promos on as well.